My wife's excitement was palpable when I walked through the door, and she rushed over to greet me with a passionate kiss before darting back into the kitchen to put the finishing touches on dinner. I was eagerly anticipating a leisurely evening with my wife, an evening of intimacy and conversation about our respective news, the thrill of sharing and celebrating together. With her long blonde hair, stunning brown eyes and amazing body, Caroline is always a sight to behold. Lately, I've had a strong premonition of her news, and we've recently begun the journey of starting a family. Don't get me wrong, we weren't completely celibate before this change. We made love almost every night for the first year of our marriage, then tapered off to an average of 3 times a week, but since Caroline went off her medication, we've been having sex more frequently around 5 o'clock. Being a mechanical engineer, my schedule is fairly consistent, with only the occasional fluctuation for a conference or seminar about once every quarter. Recently, I was promoted to engineering manager, and I now manage a team of 5 junior engineers, 3 engineering technicians, several secretaries, and my own personal secretary. Her schedule was roughly the same as mine, the only change being that she occasionally had to work overtime on major cases. After showering and changing, Caroline was putting dinner on the table when I walked into the kitchen. She had prepared tiramisu for dessert and had even uncorked a couple of bottles of fine red wine to accompany the meal and to savor the taste. Caroline's anticipation was palpable, not only in the exquisite meal, but also in her attire, which was dressed in her most glamorous gowns, suggesting that she was looking forward to an evening of passion and excitement. We filled our wine glasses and made our way to the living room, eager to share our respective news. Sitting on the couch, we went back and forth about who would speak first, as was our custom, and Caroline was so excited she could barely contain herself, her happiness practically radiating from her. I couldn't wait to share my own news with her, and she beamed with a big, enthusiastic smile as I excitedly announced that my secretary, Eva, was also pregnant. We decided to give her child to us to raise, just like they're twins. Since you and Eva will be giving birth at the same time, they are twins in every way except by blood, and since I am the father of the child, custody is not an issue, especially since she is willing to sign off on me raising the child. She only wants to be involved as the child's aunt. I eagerly awaited my wife's reply, but I was not as happy as I expected. On the contrary, she seemed angry. This confused me. I had wanted to share the news of our expanding family with her, but she reacted with extreme hostility. Even though it was too early to determine the sex, I tried to keep my excitement at bay since there was a good chance that at least one of them would be a girl. However, my wife wasn't as happy as I expected. Her anger seemed to grow unabated. I couldn't comprehend what was going on, and then as if by a sudden explosion her suppressed anger erupted. "You insidious liar, you cheated on me with that whore in your office," she accused angrily, her voice trembling. "What the hell were you thinking when you did that? Do you really think I would raise that whore's child?" Over the next half hour her attitude took a sharp turn for the worse, abusing me with every insult imaginable in the English language and even making up some new ones on the spot, which was a far cry from what I had imagined. I offered to try and salvage the evening. I was sure that after a night of passionate lovemaking, we would have a clearer picture of what our lives would be like with 3 new additions to our loving family. The next morning, my attempts to coax my wife into her own bed were met with constant resistance. She continued to be irrational with me and refused to communicate with me, which confused me even more. I met some really cool people there, one of whom was his wife and her sister, and the wife's sister, and we got along really well, and in less than 3 hours we got to know each other from a whole new perspective, if you know what I mean. When I got home, I was shocked to find that the garage door switch was out of order. Despite my confusion, I got rid of the odor and attempted to open the front door, only to find it securely locked. Though this wasn't entirely surprising as I usually leave from the garage in the morning. Putting my confusion aside and focusing on finding a solution, I take the saw from the truck and quickly cut through the door around the doorknob and deadbolt. She said I was moving out and that my clothes were packed in a suitcase outside, and feeling baffled, I took the suitcase back and sorted my things back into the bedroom. To lighten the mood, I suggested we take a shower together, but Caroline adamantly refused. It dawned on me that she might have some underlying psychological issues that needed to be addressed, so I decided to broach the subject of counseling later that evening. I returned to the bedroom to get dressed, only to find Carolyn packing her things into empty suitcases. I inquired about her sudden move, and she retorted that since I refused to leave, she would go on her own. She angrily rejected my explanation even though I was sure that being pregnant would affect her reactions. I reassured myself that once she gave birth and my secretary's twins came home, she would embrace motherhood with grace. Her sudden departure confused me. However, my plans were abruptly interrupted when a week later I was served with divorce papers in which Carolyn demanded ownership of the house, 18 years of alimony, a hefty sum for those unfamiliar with the term, 90% of our savings and investments, and 3 months later, the voice of my wife, Carolyn, pierced the tense atmosphere of the attorney's office, which marked the first time we met to discuss our impending divorce, and as we sat across from each other, I couldn't help but recognize that Carolyn had a powerful tool at her disposal, our carefully crafted prenuptial agreement designed to make infidelity sting me deeply. She had ample evidence of my indiscretions, and she had every reason to use it without mercy. Despite the gravity of the situation, I couldn't help but question her resolve. Are you really sure you want to go down this road? Heroine, I questioned her, hoping for a hint of hesitation. Her response was swift and merciless. You cheated on me, got your secretary pregnant, and had the nerve to think I would agree to raise her child. I announced that my tone was firm. Let's cancel the divorce and reconcile. Let's raise the 3 children together as our own. Let's leave the past behind and recommit ourselves to each other. The 3 children will be entirely ours. Yes, Eva will play the role of the twins' aunt, but that's about it. You'll be the doting mother of the 3 children and I'll be their father. Who knows? Who knows? Maybe we'll have another 1 or 2. It's your call. Take it or leave it, Dan. I'm not going to raise your children with that woman. Caroline shot back at me, her anger palpable. My attorney unfolded her briefcase with a barracuda grin, ready to feast on the fact that your client had rejected my client's generous offer. Here's our new proposal, she announced, sliding the papers across the table. Caroline and her attorney took a few moments to read and comprehend the documents, at which point Caroline erupted, as described earlier, and their smug expressions turned to panic. I could have sworn that my attorney, Agata, was practically salivating, and yes, she was really relentless. Caroline's attorney turned to her, his expression won over to pure panic. Dean, and tentative. Caroline stammered, absolutely. Agata nodded as she pulled out a tape recorder and placed it on the table, her fingers hovering over the recording keys. How did you determine that it was my child and not one of those cuckolds? As long as he's raising my kids right, I don't want to have to pay to raise them myself, and I'd love to have a child to carry on my legacy, but it has to be after they're adults, when the kids are 18, so we can let them know who their real father is, so I don't have to spend a dime on raising them. And believe me, Jack will never know until we tell your kids, and in 18 years, it'll be too late, and by that time, he and I will have more children together he can't do anything about it. He'll be completely destroyed. You look like him, our children will look like him, he won't suspect they're not his, we'll be fine. Caroline's voice replied confidently. The look on Caroline's face as the recording played was priceless. Agata then passed a motion for DNA testing of Caroline's fetus, which seemed like a reasonable request given his success as an attorney, and since your client had rejected the last offer, this was a new one, requiring the parties to sign a postnuptial agreement, and the divorce proceedings would be halted, but the terms of the postnuptial agreement would be triggered by the terms of any accidental conception of a child, whether it was full-term or miscarried. Agata is adamant that she began cheating on my client nearly 3 years before his indiscretions. In fact, he began cheating on her only after he had documented in detail his wife's betrayal and her intent to conceive another man's child. If she seeks a divorce, she should expect to be left destitute, with neither a home nor financial security. In addition, all of her acquaintances will be provided with an evidentiary videotape which depicts her engagement to a man who is not her husband. Caroline glanced at me, signaling that she was ready to let me speak. Caroline, you plan to make me support another man's child, and the child in your womb is innocent of this deception. I refuse to accept responsibility for your actions. However, I am willing to accept this child into our home as a stepchild, as long as your lover assumes the financial responsibility and he will pay the child's monthly support, health insurance, medical bills, and education. Though I doubt he'll ask for visitation, he will also provide for the child's college education if need be, and that's the price of his behavior. He may have claimed to be running away from parental responsibility, but now he's going to have to take it, and as for you, the consequence of your betrayal will be to raise my children as if they were your own. They'll be yours in every way except biologically, and only you here and Eva will know the truth of that when Eva would welcome her into our home when she wanted to come and see the children, and this is your confession. How hypocritical of you to dare ask for a divorce because of my infidelity while you yourself were carrying on a long-term extramarital affair. My affair came after the revelation of your betrayal. I heard that you were planning to have another man's child while making sure it wasn't mine. Eva was willing to have my children as long as she didn't have to raise them alone, and after 18.5 years, are you saying that Aunt Eva is really Diana? Yes, Eva has twins. Diana was born a minute before Laura, and Donnie Caroline's son was born 3 days ago, and when we introduced the triplets to our friends and family, everyone was surprised. Because we are good friends, I agreed to adopt you both because she couldn't raise you alone at the time. Now you all know the truth. Your mom and I love you as if you were our own, and that hasn't changed in any way. Also remember that your aunt and uncle have their own families and you will always hold a special place in their hearts, but that doesn't change the fact that we are all one family. And Mike concluded that they were smart kids, and they would understand. Did we really need to go public? Maybe not. Both sides had valid points. In the end, we decided to let them know the truth. The scoundrel tried to contest the paternity test, but DNA doesn't lie. He tried to avoid payment, but judges tend to dislike that kind of defiance. They also have ways of enforcing their rulings through the sheriffs. The sheriffs can make unannounced visits to an individual's homes and workplaces. As far as the open marriage concept goes, I did have a couple more encounters with Janice. Eva and I dated for about a year until she met Nat, and as far as Caroline is concerned, I'm fairly certain she never cheated on me. As far as I know, she's devoted to me and I pay close attention, and she's worked hard to cultivate a relationship where I'm completely dependent on her, which has worked out well for both parties. Martin Hill disappeared shortly after Jack's 18th birthday, and there's been some speculation that he's moved to the East Coast, but there's a much more dependable room 5 miles up the coast in his place. It's been 19 years since we went through that tumultuous ordeal, and I've conducted a serious investigation and have found no evidence of any further indiscretions. It's worth noting that she's developed into a devoted wife and mother and intends to retire early once the children are gone. Perhaps Eva and I could have developed a relationship, but that's not important now. What is important is that I'm not implicated in the raising of another man's child, and although I played the role of father, I saw it differently. Martin footed the bill for raising him, and I jumped at the chance to make sure he grew up with integrity and avoided becoming another scoundrel. In addition, by being with Caroline, I ensured that our 3 children would grow up in an environment where both parents love them. Adultery is a sinister path, fraught with pain and consequences that extend far beyond the moment of careless behavior, and even innocence can suffer as a result. In the case of my children, my affair with Janice and the subsequent revelation of Caroline's betrayal of me shook the foundation of our marriage, leaving scars that took years to heal. Looking back, I realized the folly of my actions. Selfishness blinded me to the pain I had caused my wife and family. Yes, my wife had sinned, but I now spoke only for myself and realized that my moment of weakness had caused irreparable damage to the trust and intimacy we had shared. The road to rebuilding our relationship has been long and difficult, filled with doubt and uncertainty, but I think our children have grown into adults who have blessed me with their own growth and given me the inner strength to thrive in spirit despite the turmoil of raising them. I am immensely proud to watch their accomplishments. Their laughter is a soothing reminder of past traumas, and as I look to the future, I can only hope that they learn from my mistakes, cherish the sacred vows of marriage, and honor the trust of their partners, but may they never succumb to the temptations that led me astray. In closing, I am thankful that I have been given a second chance to rewrite the mistakes of the past and embrace the happiness of the present. I know that redemption is possible and that true, unconditional love has the power to overcome the darkest of sins. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed it, please consider bookmarking and subscribing, and if you haven't already done so, please feel free to share your thoughts on these events in the comments below.